most people lose their drive, but these types of businesses, and I certainly know in my own business as well, that can persevere and, move through that and stay consistent is because, yes, people lose their drive, but they have the problem solving to figure out why that is and then change that issue or situation in their business. As a female online business owner with dreams of more income, more impact, and more freedom, you know there's more potential in your business waiting to be unlocked. But figuring out how to shape and transform your biz and get seen, loved, selling, and scaling can feel like, well, a mystery. So how do you cut through the noise, create offers that deeply resonate, sell and scale without you always being on, all while creating a life you love? That is exactly what this show is about. Welcome to Seen, Loved, Selling, Scale. I'm Corinda, your small biz marketing sidekick, digital office strategist, and online biz bestie. With tens of thousands of digital offers sold, tens of thousands of people helped, and millions of dollars in revenue generated in my own business as a small business owner. And through this podcast, I am here to share it all. You'll gain clear, actionable insights, strategies, and shortcuts to master your online marketing, build scalable online offers, and create a business model that works for you as much as it works for your people, so you can grow your income, amplify your impact, and free up more of your time. Let's get started. Hello, and a massive welcome to you. Welcome back to Seen, Loved, Selling, Scale. I am Corinda, and today I cannot wait to have a chit-chat about something that I think comes up for 99.9% of business owners, 99.9% of entrepreneurs, and certainly something that I have thought myself and that I've had so many conversations with clients and mastermind members about. And that is really that feeling of, why don't I have this drive for my business right now? Or looking at other people in business and thinking to yourself, how come they have so much drive? How come they are getting so much done? And how you may be able to increase drive in your business, but also to potentially change the perception around drive and what is going on in other people's businesses as well. And I'm going to get really raw and share some of my own experiences in these episodes and start here, because so often I think as business owners, we can look at other people and think, oh, like her business is coming together because she's got so much drive or she's got so much energy or so much this. And do not get me wrong, I am sure there's unicorns out there where that is absolutely true. But one of the things that people always say to me is like, oh, you've got so much drive, you're so consistent. I wish I had that. And what I want to start this podcast episode off by saying is that there are so many periods in my business. Like, I have been in small business of some description for over 10 years now. I have crafted what is, an amazing business that I'm so blessed to have, and I get to help other people craft theirs. But I am also human, and there are so many times where I do not have drive, where if I didn't have the strategies that I'm going to talk to you about in this episode today, I would be very inconsistent. I would feel very stuck, because here's what I want you to hear. I believe from my personal experience and from working with, amazing, incredible business owners and helping other incredible business owners and just interacting with incredible business owners as well, that most people lose their drive, but these types of businesses, and I certainly know in my own business as well, that can persevere and, move through that and stay consistent is because, yes, people lose their drive, but they have the problem solving to figure out why that is and then change that issue or situation in their business. Because here is what I found. Anytime I've lost drive in my business, anytime my clients have lost drive in their business, anytime friends and peers have lost drive in their business, it has been for a deeper issue. It is not because you are lazy. It is not because you are not cut out for entrepreneurship. It is not because you are failing or aren't cut out for this. And I say that because they're all things that have gone through my head at one time or another. It is likely that something is happening for you at a deeper level that is causing you feeling stuck, or that you don't have this drive. Call it procrastination, call it stuck, call it whatever you want to. It's that period in business where we're just thinking, I have the time, I have the ability, I have the skills, the capacity, the capability, and I just don't feel like I'm getting anywhere or I can do anything. And I want to be really clear that some of the things we can't talk about in this episode, just because it's completely against my duty of care to even pretend to be an expert in this, is things like mental health, is things like relationships outside your business, is things like physical health or things that might actually be holding you back and then flowing into your business. Those are very, very real things that we deal with as entrepreneurs. I know myself, I have had massive relationship breakdowns where I just had to step back from my business. It wasn't about pushing through. It was about letting my communities know that I was stepping back and, just managing that and then being there for me. I absolutely have times where I need to manage my mental health, having anxiety and depression. And there are times where it's not about using these problem-solving strategies to move forward in my business. It's about putting the business potentially in autopilot or whatever that needs to be, and then going and, working on my mental health outside that. So if there are other things coming up for you, please, please, please seek that support. You deserve it. Your business deserves it. So often it's not about pushing through in the business. It is about showing that love to yourself outside the business. That way, when you come back to the business, you can be the best person you can be. But what I'm going to go through with you today are the things that I have found when everything's, going reasonably well outside the business, as well as things can go in our worlds, that I have still felt stuck and I have still been procrastinating, or I've seen people feeling stuck and seen people procrastinating, and the things that I go to problem solve. So in this episode, we are going to break down the fact that, we don't all have endless energy. We're not all endlessly consistent. It is just as hard for you as it is for that business owner that you might be looking up to, but you can have a process, a set of steps to help you figure out why you might be feeling this way and problem solve your way back to drive and momentum. So let's go in and break these things down. So the first one I want to start with is actually overwhelm and unrealistic expectations. So one of the biggest reasons that I often see people stall in their business is because of these expectations that they have set themselves. We think that we need to do it all. We think that we need to post every day, send 2 emails a week, show up perfectly on Instagram, launch amazing new offers that take off straight away and never fail or flop, and live our lives too on the side of that, and stay hydrated and talk to our friends and have a social life and not ghost text messages for 5 to 7 working days to any of my friends listening to this that I've done that to. I'm very, very sorry. But so often we can fall into this freeze pattern or this lack of drive because of the expectations we have set for ourselves. And do not get me wrong, I know the outside world is loud. I know that there is a lot of highlight reels on Instagram. And, one of the reasons I wanted to create this podcast was so you could have a safe space to actually hear behind the curtains in someone else's business who, is doing reasonably well and is doing reasonably well with all of these real things coming up as well. And this is one of those things where if I'm setting expectations for myself, or if I see my client and community members setting unrealistic expectations, so often they lose that drive because we have this sense of like, well, I'm not going to achieve that, so I just don't want to show up at all, right? It's like what's that thing where you fall off the wagon with your diet for like one meal, so then you just think the whole day's ruined. It's kind of the same thing where we think, oh, I've missed one email. That's it. Everything's ruined. Like I'm not going to email anymore. And then you don't have that drive or that passion to show up and email because you're all of a sudden in a negative headspace about that. So one of the things that when I am feeling like I'm losing drive, I always check is what are my expectations of myself right now? Am I allowing myself to be imperfect? Am I setting realistic expectations for myself? So I've shared this a fair bit, but one of the expectations that I have for myself, or just one of the general goals that I have in business, is that I want to stay consistent with email marketing. But consistent to me looks like 40 emails per year. Now, I try and send 1 email a week, roughly. But if you look at that, that's not maths, is it? Like 40 emails. But Corinda, there's 52 weeks in a year. And that's because I've given myself permission to miss a week or two. I balance consistency with realistic expectations. So to me, that looks like 40 weeks of the year I email, And I try not to go more than 2 to 3 weeks without sending an email to keep my list like warm and my community nurtured and all of those types of things. But to me, that is consistency. So I can miss a week of emails and not get that overwhelmed feeling of, oh my gosh, I did an email last week, like spiral type stuff. And I often find as well that one of the reasons that we get so frozen is that overwhelm. We often create our own overwhelm. One of the things I see in the Content Mastery Club is that the club has a no end date. You come in, there's 12 modules in there. You can work through that at your own pace because it's a membership model, not a course model. You are absolutely not expected to reach certain milestones at certain times. I'm there every working day to support you. I'm not going anywhere after X amount of weeks or anything like that. But people still feel overwhelmed. They say, oh my gosh, like I've got to move through so much. I don't have enough time. And I'm like, how much time do you have? And they're like, oh, like 2 to 3 hours a week. I'm like, well, that's amazing. Are you doing the 2 to 3 hours a week work? And it's like, yes. And it's like, well, why are you feeling a sense of overwhelm? Have you put pressure on yourself to feel like there should be more modules done, even when you know realistically you don't have the time to do that? So why are you setting goals like that? Like, why are we hurting our own feelings, essentially? And this is a question I've had to ask myself before. Like, am I just trying to hurt my own feelings here with the things that I'm doing? And so often it's yes. So I always try and get people to hold the duality, and I hold the duality of myself of not completely taking off the reins of like accountability and goals and milestones and consistency in our business, but making sure that those are realistic, that they work within the scope and the capacity that we have, and that we are not hurting our own feelings, setting ourselves up for disaster with things like unrealistic goals. Then once I've checked that off and I think, no, like I'm not overwhelmed, it's not necessarily that, I move to my next problem solving, which is actually clarity. And the reason that clarity can stop us wanting to drive our businesses forward is because we have no damn idea what direction we are driving them in. And that really doesn't make us want to like get in the car and turn the car on and crank our podcast or our playlist or whatever it is and like drive somewhere. You might be hesitant. You might be sitting in the garage thinking, what am I doing? Where am I going? And this is one of those things that I see people lose drive for their business because they are lacking clarity. And there's 2 types of clarity here when I say clarity. There is clarity of our customer understanding and how we actually speak to those people and serve those people and how we fit into their lives. And then there's clarity of the business direction we are going in as well. So if you are lacking drive in your business, like you feel like you're turning up and you're thinking, oh, I don't want to create content today, or, oh my gosh, like I just feel so stuck. I don't know what's going on. I want you to ask yourself, are you clear on who you are talking to? Are you clear on exactly how your niche, your offer, your solution, and you as a person fit into that person's life? So by that, I mean, do you understand their pain points, their desires and aspirations, the situations that they are facing, the values that they have, the things that they believe in, the way that they are feeling? And do you know how to talk to those people about those things? One of the best things that we can do for our business, for content, for offers, for absolutely anything is constantly going back to our ideal customer understanding and making sure we have a finger on the pulse of exactly what that person experienced today. Like when they got out of bed to do with your niche, like what did they think? What did they struggle with? What were they hoping for? What were they experiencing? And write those things down and talk about that in content. For those of you who are working with me or have worked with me in the Content Mastery Club, you'll know that we call this our find it, fix it, feed it, where we find the issues, aspirations, situations, and we fix them through certain content types or we feed them. But this goes further than that as well. It comes down to all of the actions we do in our business. It can come down to that next offer that we are creating. It comes down to our business direction as a whole. It comes down to how we show up by knowing what people need from us. So anytime I'm feeling like I'm losing that drive, I'm procrastinating, I'm feeling stuck, I ask myself, is this a lack of audience clarity? Or if I have that audience clarity, I do then ask myself, is it a lack of business clarity? And certainly in the past, I have experienced this definitely being a lack of business clarity where I didn't have the drive for my business because I didn't like the business I was building. And I want you to really hear that, right? That so often we build these businesses and we love what we do and we love the people, but maybe how we're doing it is off. And it is coming back to that element where at the beginning of This Is Co, when I was a full-time service provider, full-time and then some, I really loved what I did. I loved the people that I was getting to work with, but the work itself started feeling like a chore. And I was starting to really lack the drive to get in there. And I could feel my business lagging and my content creation was lagging because subconsciously I didn't want to show up and get more customers and serve more people this way because I wasn't liking it. So we really need to look into that. And to be honest with you, sometimes it can even be that you don't like the niche that you're in or the people that you're serving actually no longer light you up. Maybe, your ideal client was XYZ because you had just been through XYZ at the time. And now maybe you've moved past that and you're ABC and you actually want to work with ABC clients, but you're still working with XYZ. So fill in those blanks as you would. But essentially, this is the type of stuff you need to look at. Is it the products that you're selling actually no longer light you up? Is there something that you don't want to sell about those things because you don't believe in the product, or there's barriers or there's objections that you actually have to this that you want to change? And changing those things can really get us to drive back into our business. And then from there, if I'm sitting there or if my clients are sitting there and we're nodding our head thinking yeah, we're not overwhelmed, we're not overextended, reasonable expectations, so clear on this business direction and these customers, but still stuck. The next thing that I really need to look into to get that drive and that momentum forward is, do I actually have the confidence, the skills, the strategy to execute what I'm trying to do here? Or do I have a starting point? Do I have some inspiration? And this plays out so many different ways in businesses. So it could look different to you, but it's one of the reasons, right, that This Is Co's product suite actually exists, for example. And that is because so often people are in their businesses and they do have clarity of what they want to do and who they want to speak to, but they're just looking at blank screens and they're thinking, I don't even know how to start this thing off. Or, why the Content Mastery Club exists, for example, thinking, I don't even know what my pathway is to master marketing as a whole. And I want you to ask yourself, are you staring at a blank screen? And is there a lack of inspiration coming up? Is there a lack of strategy coming up? Or is there a different barrier that's coming up at this stage? So one of the things that I certainly experienced, and I'll use this as an example, is this year I had beautiful images from past providers that I'd worked with and great B-roll footage, but I just felt that the true me wasn't coming through in these videos, in these images. And that's because I had grown since I'd had some of the images done, or I had just stepped, more into my journey. And every time I went to post something, I certainly felt myself not necessarily having oh my gosh, I got to get up and get a piece of content up today, or oh my gosh, I can't wait to make that sales page. I was kind of dragging my feet and I needed to ask myself check all of the other things off, had the skills, had the blah, 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 blah. You're with me. You've just gone through that checklist. And I got to this point and I was this is my brand. I just don't feel that I am truly representing myself the best that I could be online. And I'm not talking about perfectionism. It wasn't about being perfect. I'm so imperfect and I'm still creating imperfect content. But I really felt for me, who I was authentically, transparently, accessibly was no longer being reflected in those assets that I had. And that's a real issue for me, right? Because those are my brand values, authenticity, accessibility, transparency. Those are the things that I literally stand for in business. So while other people might not care about this, for me, this is an issue. And I want you to ask yourself at this stage, what things like this could be stopping you? And in order to problem solve that, I had to take the step to go, okay, I've tried to do this myself. I've, tried to do different things. It's time to get somebody in to help me. And a massive shout out to Erin, who has no idea that I've mentioned this in this podcast, but now I need to tell her. So Erin May Henry, who, by acknowledging that I was having this problem and doing this work, I was able to say to myself, I need help in this area. This is a real block for me because it's so deep. It's such a brand value. This wasn't something I could just kind of work through ignoring and taking the done is better than perfect approach, because it is literally soul deep how important this is for me. And so reached out to Erin and I said, this is my problem. This is who I am. This is what I want people to see about me. And she went, oh, easy, being the absolute genius she is, and created this entire brand shoot and creative direction for me. And just having that now, I can tell you, has increased my drive again. So I'm in no way saying that you need to go and get professional photos or a brand shoot or anything like that. Those things are truly amazing when it's right for you in business, of course. But what I am saying is, at this stage, if you have the skills, the strategy, the clarity, and you're still finding yourself stuck, this is the next thing I would be looking into and truly asking yourself, what do I actually think here is the block? Like, what is making me not excited to get up and drive my business forward? Is it lacking inspiration? Is it, the confidence? Is it some other objection coming up for you? And while we're at this point in the podcast, I actually want to flip the script a little bit here for you too and tell you that these things that I have just covered and the things that I'm going to cover in the future in terms of drive is actually how I speed my drive up as well. So it actually might not be that I have, let's say in inverted commas, a problem. There's no issue coming up. I may not be lacking drive or lacking momentum per se, but I might want to add a little bit more spark into my business, a little bit more oomph in my business. I might want to just have a little bit of something extra that sparks me. And so I will start to do things like my content's been good. I'm feeling great about it, but okay, is there something else or someone else I can speak to about their situation right now to create content on that? Or I'm loving the way my brand looks, but how can I take it to the next level? There's absolutely nothing wrong as well with asking yourself how I can add extra oomph into my business on top of the good that is already there. So that's also something that I wanted to mention because I think so often we can wait for a problem to come up, but now knowing this, let's say, impact off this work with Erin, that's giving me in my business. It's certainly something that now that I've learned that about myself 10 years down the track in business, and that's who I am now, that I'll probably schedule these things regularly to make sure that I am having that oomph and having that excitement without losing it. So we can take these lessons, right, once we've done and discovered these things, and you'll discover whatever it is for you and make sure that you are putting those in place. So after I've checked off those things, if I'm still finding myself really with a little bit of lack of drive, there's two main things that I need to do. And these are really big things. And I wish that I could go in depth into them in the podcast, but also these are things that would be best in other people's wheelhouses. And I'm going to bring experts on this show eventually that will also speak about these things. But I want to cover these off for now because they are things that you want to be auditing as well. So the first one is really reconnecting with your why, with why you are doing this, intrinsically and extrinsically. Why did you start this business? Who are you helping? What impact are you making? This why is really your compass. And sometimes in business, if we don't connect with our why, everything else doesn't matter. And when we first start a business, I think our why is so much at the forefront, right? We had this literal spark in us. There is a why that we started this business. We had this passion, or we helped a friend do something and we realized we could help more people, or, we really were looking for more income and found this thing that we're passionate about and good about. And we can make income from it too. And all the stars aligned and all of these things happened. And sometimes as we maybe even move past that, we're oh, we've achieved the why. I made some money, or I did that thing and I'm helping people now. And sometimes we actually need to create a new why. And then sometimes, and this is what I'm talking about, the part that I can't exactly help with, is that sometimes our why was a little bit misguided. So, for example, just one thing that comes to mind is that somebody might have got into showing up on social media because deep down it was a sense of validation. And then when social media isn't actually working for them the way that they hope, because social media is hard and not everyone's a viral sensation, and we can see so much success on social media without those things, but that constant noise around vanity metrics and not meeting those things can really weigh us down. And so if deeper down we were kind of driven to start this business because of validation and we weren't getting it, then that can really kind of knock us off our horse. And we really want to do some work to ask ourselves, well, do I want to be in business? Yes, still, but what is my actual true why of what I want to be here? And, maybe being able to flip the script completely on that. And then there is the element as well that we may have outgrown our why, and our why needs to be bigger. So when I started This Is Co and I started my digital products, I had this goal of helping 10,000 people. And I thought like, oh my gosh, I'm going to work the rest of my life to help 10,000 people. This is amazing. Like 40 years down the track, I'm going to be celebrating, achieving this. And it was in some of my lead magnets. Like if anyone has some of my first lead magnets, you'll see in there like Corinda's on a mission to help 10,000 people. And once I started my low ticket digital strategy, because that can reach so many people, I achieved that number. And I was like, oh, like it was such a beautiful moment. Don't get me wrong, but like this kind of vision that I had had in my head of like, I'm going to drive and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Like it had gone, I achieved it. And I needed to start setting different whys in my business to keep that drive going. So that's really the first thing I want you to look into is when we're lacking this drive, it really is that why. Like what is driving us intrinsically, extrinsically at that even deeper level to get up, to do the work, to all of those things I just said about acquiring skills and doing the problem solving and all of that, like what deep down is driving us and how can we continue to like leverage that in our business? And certainly again, that this isn't something that you just have to do when things are maybe slowing down for you. You could be doing this constantly. I saw an amazing speaker recently whose goal had been a dream property, and that was their screensaver every single day. They like opened up their computer and it was this beautiful, beautiful property. And they were like, okay, like this is driving me, like keep it front and center. If that is healthy for you and the way that you work, like it was for this person, to continue to remind yourself of that as well. And then lucky last, and this is one that I do see come up quite a bit as well, is that if you are really, truly procrastinating, like if you are finding that all of these things align and that so often you just cannot get the drive, I really, really, really want you to check your fear of failure. And again, this is one of those things where I wish I could talk more deeply on this. I've had a lot of personal experience with this and I will share that personal experience. But I'm a business coach, right? Like I'm not a psychologist or a child trauma expert or anything like that. And I really encourage you to not listen deeply to people in wheelhouses that aren't their wheelhouse, like if that makes any sense, because so often we can do that. And I think that we need to actually be like, hey, I've had some personal experience with this, but you should probably seek professional help. And that's essentially what I'm saying to you here. But this fear of failure is one of the biggest things that I have experienced personally and that I have watched people experience and referred them on to get professional help once I've kind of identified that this might be going on for them to work around. Because so often the fact that we know what to do, we have the energy to do it, we're driven to do it, but this fear of failure is so ingrained in us or such a worry for us that we just become frozen and we start to self-sabotage and we start to slow down and we start to make excuses of why we can't do things. And I often say, so often, in fact, I think that my, beautiful community must think I'm a broken record, but I really mean this, that we can't fail in business. We only get insights or outcomes if we choose to think that way. So there are so many times I would have done what society potentially deems as failure, right? Like I have gone through and something just hasn't worked at all for me, but I've chosen personally to consider that an insight. Like, great, that didn't work, cross that off the list. Now I know to do it this other way. Or like even on a smaller level, like, okay, like that reel type that I'm doing, like I've done it a couple of times now. It's not resonating with my audience. Great, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to try something else. So, a flopped post isn't a failure, or, not making the profit goal that I'd set up for the month on that other level isn't a failure. Both of these things are insights getting me to the outcome. So anytime I try something in my business, I always remind myself that I'm going to win either way. I'm either going to get the insight about that approach doesn't work and it's pointing me in the direction to try other things that will, or I'm going to get the outcome. And I can definitely say for, this approach that's worked for myself and when I've seen it work for clients and them dealing with their like fear of failure and things like that, that this is such a driver. Like knowing that you can't fail or knowing that failure really doesn't matter and it's just a part of life is something that adds and infuses so much drive into business. I truly do think that so many of the things that I have achieved now is because not only was I like eventually not afraid of failing, don't get me wrong, I had to feel the fear and do it anyway. There was a period where I had to teach myself failure was safe for sure, but I would now fail happily and fail and fail and fail and fail and then succeed. And so often people don't see the failures. They just see the success and they think, well, Corinda never failed. And I don't want to fail, like I'm so scared of it. But I will tell you, I have failed. And my mentors have failed. And the people I work with have failed. And then they have just used those things as insights to succeed. So if at the end of the day, you are really feeling that lack of drive and ticking off all of those other things, I would really encourage you to explore your fear of failure and then anything else that kind of falls into that wheelhouse as well, like people pleasing and letting people down or any of those types of things. It is this really deep ingrained thing where we're ticking everything else off, but something else is holding you back. Because if you do want to be the best business owner you can be, sometimes it isn't about your offers or your marketing. Sometimes it is about you. And we'll talk about that more as we go through this podcast. But when I'm talking about getting seen, loved, selling, and scaling, I really look at those things over your marketing, your offers, and you as a whole and asking, do I have what it takes to get seen? Do I have what it takes to get loved? And if I'm saying no, then I go and work on those things as well. So that is the checklist. And I truly, truly hope it helps you next time you think to yourself, I just don't have the drive that so-and-so has, or how is so-and-so getting so much done, or I just feel like I'm not staying consistent. I first want you to obviously check your environment as a whole and support yourself in whatever ways you need there, but then come into your business and really start working through those things. Look through your expectations of yourself. Look through any overwhelm that you may be creating. Make sure that you actually have the capacity to do the things that you are saying you want to do, and try not to hurt your own feelings by saying you should do things that would just be absolutely impossible. Then move to that clarity stage. Really check that clarity, making sure you have clarity in customer, clarity in direction, and then go through and check that you have the skills, that you have the strategy, that you have the inspiration, that you have the support, and that you have like the confidence, and that you are actively removing any blockers that you also might identify at this stage. And then from there, start to look at that other work as well. Really go through that inner work about your why, what drives you, and on that deeper level, what actually might be preventing you if everything else is in alignment, ticking those things off, and you still feel there is that stall. Reach out and do that work on yourself as well. And then always remember that when you find what increases your drive, is it having shortcuts? Is it having inspiration? Is it working on strategy? Is it having support? Is it being your most authentic self online? Is it doing that certain type of offer? Is it speaking to your people in this certain type of way? What is it that lights you up in your business? And harness that. Put more of that into your business to get more drive. Always, always remember that you are the CEO of your business. Step back from working in your business and look at what you can work on your business to be the best you can be in business with way more ease. So I hope that this episode, if you are feeling that loss of drive, if you've ever looked at someone else and think, how do they always have drive, and that you are feeling like there's periods where you don't, please know that you are not alone. I can guarantee you the people that you are looking at, the people that are getting things done, still lack drive, lack motivation, procrastinate in their business. It is just that from my experience and from business owners I have worked with, the people who look like they consistently have drive are actually just consistently problem solving and empowering themselves to get their drive, motivation, and momentum back when they have lost it like anyone else. That's all from me. Thank you again for tuning into this episode. You can always reach out via DM at thisisco or thisiscorinda if you had any thoughts or questions. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Seen, Love, Selling, Scale podcast. I hope today's episode left you feeling inspired, fired up, and empowered to make serious moves that align with your goals and version of success, both in life and business. If you loved what you heard, head over to www.thisisco.com.au to find all the links and resources mentioned in today's episode. And if you aren't already following the show, make sure you hit that follow button so you never miss a future episode when it drops. I'll see you again next week, same time, same place, same goal to get you seen, loved, selling, and scaling. See you then.